Hi everyone, it's Autumn. Hope everybody is well. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the one pervasive thought that will go through your head throughout this entire process. So from the moment you start to realize, truly realize, if you have that realization in the relationship while it's ending, or if it happens to you right after the relationship or some time after, the reality of what had happened. For a lot of us, it happens during the devalue and then, subsequent discard stage where the mask is being pulled off the narcissist or sociopath or psychopath or even borderline, depending on kind of what category of borderline they fall into. And I'll just call them narcissists as an umbrella term, but I do mean all of the cluster B personality disorders. And my philosophy is that they are all narcissistic at the core, so I feel that's a good umbrella term. So anyway, there's this pervasive thought that you will have from the moment the mask starts to be ripped off. And even after you heal and recover to the most you're going to heal or recover. I've talked about this before, and just as a side note, I don't believe that there is 100% quote unquote recovery after going through certain major life-changing perspective altering events or experiences. And I think it's for a reason. I think there's parts of it we do need to emotionally connect with throughout our lives to learn and to grow, which is what these experiences have to offer us, even though they're enormously painful and horrendous. So anyway, I don't believe we fully recover. I think it's like 95%, right? There's still that 5% of emotional attachment there that should be there. It's what keeps us connected to the things that allowed us to become more enlightened or more realistic or more happy or more peaceful or whatever good that comes out of it, whatever learning lesson. Even when you get to that recovery, healing place, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, whenever that time comes. Even then, you will have this pervasive thought, not all the time, of course, but it just is sprinkled in, right? It's one thing. And it might happen after years have passed and you're in that healing recovery and your life is great. There'll just be a whisper or a wind will blow maybe once or twice a year, and you'll be reminded of something, and this thought will still be there, just as it was the very first second the mask was being pulled off. And it is, how is this possible? How is this possible? It's like this. How I know it's not like you're like, duh, this is how I feel. Of course, that's what I'm saying. And I know it's not some big epiphany, but I just want to talk about this because it's the core. Like, how did this happen? How is this possible? Even after learning everything, after education, after coaching, I am in this field. I have been working with people for years. I understand mental health. I understand people and psychology, and yet I still think, how is this possible? When you hear about other people's stories, okay, even if you went through this experience, you had a narcissistic parent, you had a narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopath, borderline spouse, husband, wife, serious girlfriend, boyfriend, or very close friend, or a mother or father, or a sibling that you're close to, anyone that you're close to, and had a long-term relationship of some sort. I don't mean romantic. I mean any kind of relationship. You will understand and empathize and, relate, obviously, to other people's stories. But there's still this element of, it's only when you're in it, no matter what you say, no matter how much you can relate or the person you're talking to can relate, you can never convey the reality of what happened and the feelings and the betrayal and the lies. Because it's like saying this person lied. They lied about this, they lied about that. This is why I had done a vlog. I think it was the last one I've done. I haven't done many lately. I'm going to start doing them more. Just, to relate to people, and I like doing them. And I have been wanting to do a vlog or a video on the love bombing stage. I had done like 7 or 8 of them. They were all intellectual, right? They were all me talking about this is what the love bombing stage looks like, and this is how it feels. And it never felt right to me because that stage had such an impact on me. And so many people, so many, coaching clients I've spoken with, and groups and other people I've met along the way that have been through this, spoken to, videos I've watched. I know that stage may be actually the most impactful, is that a word? The stage that impacted you the most. How's that? Because even though it feels like that stage where you discovered the truth of that person, you discovered their double life, you realized they weren't the person you thought they were. Even though that stage, in effect, was the stage that impacted you the most, because that's when this whole thing started, essentially. Really, the whole thing started, though, and the foundation of the whole experience, no matter if you were with the person for 4 months or for 40 years. The whole thing started in the love bombing stage. Let me explain real quick, and you may already understand this or, feel this way, that without that stage to solidify you into committing to the apparent, or the perceived rather, joy and love and happiness that you saw or thought you saw, believed to be real, you would not have been as committed throughout the entire duration of that relationship. Now, I'm talking of, obviously, more of the romantic, narcissistic relationship. But when it comes to non-parental relationships, that's a different story, right? That's something, I agree. I have some people commenting 100%. That is by far the worst. Absolutely. I have 2 grandmothers that are raging narcissists my parents had to grow up with. It's just horrible. But unfortunately for this discussion, I'm going to take this out, not to disclude you, because a lot of the other stuff I'm talking about, if you had a narcissistic parent, you can relate to. But in terms, obviously, of the love bombing. But even non-romantic narcissist sociopathic relationships, business partners, best friends, so on and so on, they have a type of love bombing stage. It's just not romantic. There's been a couple of narcissists / and or borderlines and or sociopaths that I have been friends with. 2 that are, by far, absolutely, 100%. Sociopaths, comorbid with narcissism, I would stake my life on it. They have every trait. And the most cunning, destructive women you'll ever meet in your life. And they both, I didn't realize it at the time, but in retrospect, they both had a platonic form of the love bombing stage. Right? Whether you're your best friend, you get enmeshed in each other's lives. They do all these wonderful things for you. I remember the one of them, I'll call her Nat, kind of like her name. she would randomly give me gifts, right? We had known each other through friends for several years before we became quote unquote, great friends, best friends, whatever she kind of formed the relationship into. And she was more of like a hardcore, overt, classic narcissist that I kind of wrote off as, her upbringing, her culture, yada yada, which wasn't it at all. And I was silly to have done that. But, I thought she was genuine to me, and to our closest friends. And I remember we were only good friends for a very short time, maybe 2 months, when my birthday came up. I know I was in my late 20s. I'd say it was like my 29th birthday or something. 30th, maybe. 5-6 years ago. And we stayed, quote unquote, good friends for 2 years until, the whole thing fell apart. Because I found out the truth of who she was. But she gave me like some crazy, ridiculous, like $500 gift certificate to a body med spa or medical, beauty med spa, whatever. And all of these kind of like overly, you're wonderful, this isn't normal, even in romantic relationships at the very beginning, let alone platonic, for someone to go this overboard. But anyway, my point is, when I was doing that video about the love bombing, I had done 8 of them from this intellectual, educational standpoint. And I could never quite convey it. It felt weak and listless. It felt like it wasn't conveying the depth by which the stage affected me in the moment and for the entire years of the relationship. And so if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to look at, I think it's like vlog number 5 or something. There's a picture of myself and my ex-husband, the narcissist sociopath, looking in each other's eyes on our wedding day. Me smiling, so you can look for that video. And I just started talking about it and recording it. I didn't think I would use it. It was more like I was doing these videos that day, and I kept recording. I kept recording, and I kept recording. And every time I listened back, it just sounded, it didn't convey what I wanted it to convey. It didn't convey the depth and the importance by which that love bombing stage felt like. What it's kind of solidified. Not to say it solidified like I am now, but to emotionally show why it solidified it for me, the relationship, and why it was the glue that kept me in even when there was mass dysfunction or mass unhappiness on my part. And I just got so emotional thinking about it and reminiscing about that stage and that feeling I had. And I just started to record myself talking. And then I was a little overwhelmed, wasn't crying, but I was a little choked up, a little overwhelmed, and I paused my recorder, the application that I record with. And then I fell asleep, I think. I went to bed, planning on finishing the video or the audio when I got up, if I was even going to say anything more. Well, then it had closed itself automatically, and I couldn't go back and hit pause. Now, I could, of course. Look, I do all my videos that you hear, and all of them, in a one-shot take. I don't edit. One day I will, as I get more, have more time to invest. And I have a whole bunch of 4 videos that are more kind of, have different graphs and pictures and videos and, more of a educational, like, I don't know how to, like a formal type of video, or more highly produced video. And I have, side note, I have a good friend for about 15, 16 years who's a independent filmmaker who has been looking for a new documentary to make. And I have a meeting with him. I mean, we're friends, good friends for 15, 16 years. But I'm going to meet with him in 2 weeks to pitch him this idea. I've already talked about it, and he's very interested in I'm going to do a video on this, doing a documentary on the cluster B personality disorders, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so I just went on 4,000 things. I'm sorry. Obviously, this is a vlog, so thanks for hanging in there, guys. I'll do a different video, much more to the point, about the point I'm trying to make. But so anyway, I came back the next morning. It was unpaused. It had closed itself, and that was it. And I don't want to edit. I want these to be raw. I feel at this point, my goal is to relate in the way that I needed to be related to learn in the way I had to learn. Looking back at the videos and the podcasts, and there weren't many, but there was some specific ones that really helped me heal and understand. And it was of course, like you may know, I think the darkest, most painful time of my life, yet far. Knock on wood. I hope it stays that way, because I can't imagine going through a period of my life that's darker and more painful than when my ex-husband's mask flew off and everything I knew to be true wasn't. And as you know, your entire perspective of life changes, of your place in the world. All of this cognitive dissonance comes flying to the surface. So, again, I opened the app, it was done. I said, whatever, I'll just post it, because I didn't have a video that day. And up until 2 weeks ago, when I got sick and I had to move and had toxic mold syndrome and all this crazy stuff happened, I was trying to post a video every day. So I just posted it. And it wasn't until I had this flood of comments later that day that I listened back. I never even listened to it. And it really touched a lot of people. And I listened back, and it really even touched me. I'm a little hard on myself sometimes. I have high standards in life. Much higher for myself than other people. Both good and bad. It's something I've worked on a lot, to appreciate myself more, even when it's not perfect. So I don't often listen to myself, or I've done some random, before the narcissistic abuse and cluster B, focus. I had done many small market radio shows and internet radio shows throughout the years as both a violinist and as a life coach when I was doing psychologist. And, I would listen back on those, or articles I would write, or myself playing the violin, and I often am not touched, even if it's touching. But this time, that vlog is one of the only things I have ever produced, listened back, read back, and was truly touched by myself. It was really raw and deep, and it portrayed exactly what I wanted it to. It was so cool on that level. So anyway, that love bombing stage is the most, for most people anyway. We all have our different experience, but I found it to be the most imperative and important, because it's the foundation by which everything else happened. Without that, most people wouldn't have stayed. unless, I always have to preface this. Codependency, I put it in quotes. I have a whole thing about it. I don't believe it is the mainstream concept of it and how it's used and how it's labeled. People are labeled with it. Does people justice that it is correct. I don't believe that. However, I believe the traits are real in about 25, 30, 40% of the people who have been labeled codependent. That they do have some pathology and some issues in terms of these quote-unquote codependent traits that don't serve them well. So, yeah, maybe some of us had some of those traits that kept us in the relationship, but I've met all different types of people. Granted, the one thing that everyone I've met that has gone through this and been in either a close friendship, business partner, or especially romantic relationship with a cluster B personality disorder person and gone through this type of abuse, the one thing that I found almost universal is that these are, for the most part, very much people with empathetic personalities that have personalities strong in empathy and strong on just core kind of kindness and have a lot of integrity in terms of being virtuous on that level, just kind of that goodness. And yes, maybe some of the quote-unquote codependency traits, but let's be honest, there's probably more people that don't have that. These people, the narcissists, the sociopaths, the borderlines, even the histrionics, the cluster Bs, and just in general, toxic, highly manipulative people. They reel you in. You think it's real. And then they reel you in, R-E-E-L. And then you think it's real, R-E-A-L, right? How do you not know? Your reality of the world is that people, what you see is what is true. That certain things mean certain things. I know that sounds funny. Certain things mean certain things. You probably know what I mean. Like, if someone says I love you in the context of a romantic relationship, it means a certain thing. This is the reality of the world. This is the lens by which we live our life. This is the filter by which, the dictionary, if you will, the playbook by which we decipher and decode subconsciously, consciously, second by second in our life, our reality. And we make decisions, so if someone marries us, it means a certain thing in our reality. How did we know that suddenly all the rules, quote unquote, all of the definitions of the words that we always thought were a certain way, all of the meaning behind particular actions that for our entire life we had basically been backed up. This is why we believe this, because everything we saw backed up our belief system. How did we know suddenly that it changed? We didn't. So just because this happened to you does not mean you have a pathology or issue that needs to be corrected. Look, we all have issues, and I always say this: the goal in life is not to be without issues. Don't ever make that your goal, because it will never happen, and it shouldn't be the goal. Because it's like challenges and issues, quote unquote, issues, whatever that means, within ourselves, emotional, intellectual, blah, blah, blah. They are they're kind of like the raft that keeps us moving ahead and they're the rafts I guess that's a good, the dinghy, the dinghy, the dinghy, the rowboat, that's better, rowboat, the rowboat by which gets us from one ship moving forward to the next ship. The big colossal periods of our life that we are a certain way. And then it's our issues and dealing with them and self-awareness and having challenges and finding greater depth in us and overcoming things. So anyway, the point is that we shouldn't have the goal be to be without issues. We're never going to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. The goal should be to live a fundamentally positive energy life where you are fundamentally, depending on what you want, what feels best for you, and either happy, that's happy fundamentally on a daily basis, and or that you're at peace with, and or stability. It all depends on the person. But yeah, so I just went like down 4,000 roads in this video, just talking randomly. But oh yes, I never finished the love bombing stage. Is so incredibly important. I think it's an important place to start with, to reflect on. Because see, one of the reasons why we go over and over in our head, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe this happened. Yes, it's because it defied our core concept of how people are, of how we are, of how life is, and so on. It redefined the definitions of words, even of behaviors and so on. Yes, but there's a greater, more kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry if you've been hearing some clicking in the audio. I have this wonderful mic, but it picks everything up, and I had a fan on. I just turned it off. Okay, so there's this deeper. It's more raw or instinctual, or what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word. It's more that animalistic, raw thing within us that's in our gut. Like, there's a word. If you know what, this is going to bother me. If you're listening to this and you can think of a word that describes what I'm talking about, put it in the comments. It's just driving me crazy. There's a word that is on the tip of my tongue, but I can't grasp it, that kind of describes this more raw, deep, animalistic thing that's like innate or inherent in us. And that has to do with our hopes and our dreams and our concept and wishes for or idea of what tomorrow will be like, what we're working towards, or what things will become. And see, from the very beginning of any relationship, right, we're coming into it with this idea of our hopes, of what we hope to have in our life. And they're very meaningful, at least to people who have normal emotional capacity. You know, obviously narcissists, sociopaths, and the cluster Bs and certain other toxic manipulative people, that is not the case. But for most emotionally, quote unquote, normal people, our hopes are the thing that keep us moving forward. And even probably the cluster Bs. I mean, they have hopes. Their hopes just happen to be maniacal, malignant about them getting everything they want, essentially, right? So even for them, just it's all relative to our core personality and who we are at the core. But these hopes of camaraderie and compassion, mutual compassion, and working towards goals. See, you came into it with those hopes, and then that cluster B person saw your hopes because you were vulnerable and or open and or they're really good at reading people, reading between the lines, and or most people's hopes in a relationship are relatively the same, right? So, I mean, it's not that hard to mirror back at the beginning. If you're a man, you kind of know what the likelihood is if you find a good-hearted, kind-hearted, compassionate, caring, hopeful woman. It's that, and men too, and women too. They know, so it's a little different, but they learn because it's pretty common. If you're a man, you know that most emotionally, quote unquote, normal or healthy women, of a certain age or of a certain, you might change it a little depending on the like kind of stereotypical, like what would be typical, I guess, or the common thing to mirror back. They don't even need to know you to start mirroring back because they're gambling and hedging their bet based on the odds are 90 probably something percent of kind-hearted, hopeful women in general go into a relationship, at the core, even if they have trust issues or self-esteem issues, at the core they're hoping for camaraderie, for a man who pays them attention, who gives them compliments, who gives them affection, for a family, even if you're not interested in actually having kids or you already had them, you want to build a family like unit, and a home together. You want to have someone you can trust. You want somebody who is going to be there. There's these basic things that the average woman wants, and that's her hopes. So it's not very hard for, let's say, narcissistic men or sociopathic men to come in and just start giving you what you want to hook you. And then women, same thing. And I think almost women, it's unfortunately for men, it's almost easier in some ways because there's a more, physical, sexual element at the beginning that can help solidify certain, wanting to see her more often, and then the more often he sees her, and she has the same thing. She kind of knows what most men that are coming into a relationship want. People good, the normal person wants basically all the same average thing, trust, camaraderie, blah blah, So this was this person giving you your hopes on a platter and letting you open your heart and lean into finally having this magnificent love and friendship and person to spend the rest of your life with and share your life with. And then, to have it ripped out from under your feet, either in the devalue discard stage, or in my case, it was like these tiny little moments would happen, which I'm sure a lot of you experienced. I had the idealization phase for a few months. It lasted a long time, beyond a few months. But see, there were these incidences that started about a couple months in. Like these little shadows of reality that I didn't know was reality because, look, I wanted to believe. And the reality is, everybody has things that they do that are quirky or problematic, or again, we have all issues. Oh, it's just crazy. So, I started this vlog, this video, talking about that one pervasive thing, right, that will stay with you throughout the entire experience, journey, 50 years from now. it will probably still be, even when you have no emotional attachment to it anymore on any real level, you still will look back and go, how is that possible? How is this? How was that? How can this be possible? That there are people like this. See, because you are in it. And again, unless you've gone through it, you can't understand. You can't understand it. You just can't, because you cannot grasp the depth by which reality gets turned on its head. And the feeling that exists when someone you truly love and trusted turns out to be fake. I mean, literally fake. Literally. And then one more thing. Because this person ended up being fake, the reality is when we go no contact, either we impose it and our ex-partner or even friend, but let's just keep romantic for right now, but anyone really, anybody, it doesn't matter. It really, it's the same thing. So when we go no contact, either because we finally do it because we know that's the only way to heal and move on in your life, is to go no contact, or you're completely discarded and devalued and they, pretend like you don't exist. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And if that's happened to you, thank your lucky stars, because going no contact when you have to choose it is so hard. So it's a blessing in disguise, as much as it might have hurt. But regardless, when that time comes, because it has to come, otherwise you're going to be actively being abused and manipulated and lied to. Until you go no contact, you are in some way, shape, or form in your own head, or they are doing it, being abused, manipulated, and treated horribly. Anyway, so when you go no contact, it's a death. The death starts when you take off that person's mask, when it slips for real, when you, not the first time, not the little times, not the times you think, oh, that's just their issues. No, I mean when the whole thing bottoms out. When the whole thing bottoms out, and then you start going online and you start reading, you see the reality. That is when they died. But that's not when their funeral was. Their body was still walking around, right? Their funeral was the day you went no contact, or they went no contact. Because not only did the person you believe to exist never exist, and therefore the idea has just been killed, the idea of that person has died. Now the person literally doesn't exist in your reality anymore. And because the energy, the personality, the persona never did, they don't exist anymore in your reality. So you have to be aware that this grieving can go on for a long time, and it's normal. And because it was a divorce or a breakup, and the person, there's like this there's a different, it's weird. There's like this free pass thing I've noticed. And look, I'm not saying there shouldn't be. God, I mean, it is hard for people that lose a spouse to death. But there is this notion that because let's just say they were so in love and then she lost her husband. But what about if he turns out to be a narcissist and he was lying the whole time, and then that person's no longer there, but to her the love is just the same regardless of or him. I mean, either gender, as if it was real. So in reality, there's kind of no difference psychologically and emotionally. Okay, I should end this. This is so long. If you got through this, I'm sorry. This is totally a vlog, and this is just me pontificating. And if you guys listen to my videos, you will know that that was a word that I could not remember how to say, and everybody helped me. So I wanted to put that in now that I remember and know how to say it. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.